We're back here with Elizabeth Millner, who is our in-court reporter for the Sean Diddy Combs criminal trial. Elizabeth, so good to see you. So you were in court today, week 2, continuation of Dawn Richard's testimony. She left the stand, Kerry Morgan on the stand. Before we get to the substance of what they had to say, what is the vibe like in court today? How does Sean Combs appear? Who's there? Paint the picture for us, because unfortunately, as we know, there are no cameras. There are no audio recordings allowed in that courtroom. What did you see and what did you hear?
Yeah, well, the tone as far as this morning goes, a lot of people were kind of anticipating what would the rest of Dawn Richard's testimony look like, and especially more so, how would the cross-examination and how would Diddy's defense attorneys kind of be able to pull apart essentially her credibility. As far as just everyone inside the courtroom today, it doesn't look like there was that big kind of present for the defendant side that we've seen last week, especially when we came to day 1 and even day 2 of testimony, in that we didn't see any of Diddy's children inside that courtroom, which I think is a little big and a little not big at the same time. We saw images over this weekend that the twins were in during prom season. They were in their prom dresses and that sort. Not 100% sure where the sons are in this kind of picture, as far as are they on the West Coast again, because the twins are about to graduate. So it's unclear why the family presence wasn't so big as it has been for day 1 and day 2. As far as Diddy himself, though, it seems like that didn't necessarily faze him that much. I assume that he, looks forward to seeing his family inside that courtroom, but maybe understanding that they had other obligations. He didn't seem too bothered by that or anything like that. So as far as him being inside that courtroom, it was still the same old Diddy that we've seen, kind of in the same old outfit that we've seen him in as well too. He was wearing a tan sweater, he had a white undershirt, he had khakis on. When he comes into the courtroom, he hugs his attorneys, he chats with them, all those types of things. And so a lot of people were just anticipating what would it look like once Dawn Richard got back on the stand. And let me tell you something, Jesse, when I saw her on the stand today, and even on Friday as well too, she appeared like she just didn't want to be there. You could tell that she was very uncomfortable, especially talking about her recollection of her time that she had worked with Diddy, her time after working with Diddy, especially during the cross-examination part. I thought that maybe she would get a little emotional because she just appeared maybe a little nervous, maybe a little intimidated, not necessarily sure, but she was very soft-spoken while she was on that stand today answering some of the questions. A lot of those questions obviously had to do with the egg frying incident. It had to do with why Dawn Richard even continued working with Diddy even afterwards, or even wanting to work with Diddy afterwards. And so a lot of the anticipation, or just the overall tone inside that courtroom, especially when it came to that cross-examination, it was kind of, it was a little rough to watch. It was a little like a lot of people, especially us in the gallery, in the press, were just kind of like, wow, this is a little brutal. And they kind of hit the points that they wanted to hit while them being defense attorneys. And so I think that the prosecution really kind of had to tighten everything up as far as, trying to get maybe back in the jury's good graces after kind of seeing that cross-examination go and all those holes that were poked into her testimony. And so that was just the overall essence and tone of today's, especially this morning before Kerry Morgan got on the witness stand.
To go by, because I know it's so loud. So this, Elizabeth, how is the jury responding to Dawn Richard's testimony, and what were some of the highlights? I mentioned it briefly before you came on air, kind of summarized some of the points, but what were some of the points that came out today from her testimony, both on direct and cross-examination, and how was the jury responding to her testimony? Because let's not forget, she is a corroborating witness for Cassandra Ventura Fine. She helped to articulate some of the finer elements of racketeering. What were some of the highlights from her testimony, both on direct and cross, and how was the jury responding?
Well, absolutely. As far as being under direct, it was really just kind of ironing out the details as far as what happened with this whole egg skillet incident, that being the incident that happened in 2009, according to Dawn Richard, where essentially Cassie was cooking Diddy breakfast. Diddy comes downstairs, gets upset about either the way that the breakfast was made or why it wasn't being made fast enough, and essentially just an assault happened in the aftermath of that, something that Dawn Richard has even pointed out in her civil lawsuit, something that definitely the defense was definitely talking about today. So a lot of it had to do just with under direct examination still while they were finishing that up, just what was Cassie's demeanor when this was going on. They were also asked, or they being Dawn Richard was also asked, Cassie had a pretty quiet demeanor, and that Diddy wasn't necessarily having that when it comes to what kind of promoted this type of violence or what prompted this type of violence, as far as why Diddy would essentially physically assault her. And Dawn would say Cassie would just be speaking up for herself, or it would be something random that happened. Then there were moments where they had talked about who witnessed these physical assaults, and Dawn Richard pointed out names such as Harve Pierre, who used to be the president of Bad Boy, Mia, who we expect to be testifying as well too. She had worked for Diddy. Capricorn Clark had worked for Diddy as well too, and then she named other names like D-Rock and Bonds, who both worked security for Diddy. So I can kind of see where the prosecution was kind of painting that or amping that up as far as how the staff is involved in all of that sort. As far as 2010, just the following year, she says she witnessed another incident where they were all at a festival together up in Central Park. They were about to bring out Diddy's Dirty Money group, and that right before this had happened, or actually, excuse me, I'm looking at the wrong incident. Sorry about that. But there was another incident in 2010 where they were having a dinner with a bunch of celebrities, and that Cassie and Diddy were kind of arguing a little bit secretly there, and Diddy punched her in the stomach, according to Dawn Richard. There, she said that at that dinner, they had people like Harve Pierre, again, former president of Bad Boy, D-Rock, security, Kalina Harper, who used to work with Diddy's Dirty Money, Mia, who also worked with Diddy, and Bonds were all there during this dinner. And so then we kind of saw an exhibit photo of what Harve Pierre looked like. And so then there was another talk, and this is kind of where I bring up the Central Park incident, where there was an incident where Diddy had allegedly physically assaulted Cassie while they were getting ready for this festival, and that Cassie came into the bathroom, and that Kalina and Dawn kind of confided in her, or at least kind of helped her during this moment. They all kind of put on sunglasses and then just kind of carried on like usual. Meanwhile, Cassie's kind of nursing some injuries just behind the scenes. Now, when it came to the cross-examination, and there was just a lot of testimony going on today, so I'm trying to get you guys all my notes going on and everything like that. But once it came to the cross-examination, that was done by Nicole Westmoreland, and this was the first time we've kind of really seen her in action when it comes to this specific trial. And so first thing that Nicole Westmoreland's going to be asking her is just about her lawsuit, the lawsuit that she had filed just a few months ago against Diddy. And so she was asked about the demand letter that was I guess set up by her attorneys. She was asked about how many times she spoke with federal prosecutors, and she said she couldn't necessarily recall the amount of times that she had done it, but the defense kind of summed it up that she at least spoke with federal prosecutors 8 different times. They brought back the egg skillet incident where on Friday the defense was pointing out, you said that Cassie was cooling the eggs, and then Diddy comes downstairs and then he hits Cassie, or did he hit her, or did you see him hit her? Did you see that he had threw something at her? Was he like, it was really just kind of that quick and that much questioning kind of being thrown at her essentially. And then they brought up how it kind of compared to what she had said in her lawsuit just about the whole egg incident, and said that she didn't see the pan hit Cassie in the lawsuit. And then when she was asked essentially why she brought the lawsuit about, the defense was really kind of pointing at her, and I think this is something that, anybody who had filed a civil claim against Diddy might be expecting this under the cross-examination, is what was their motivation in filing the lawsuit against the defense's client essentially. And so while Dawn at times was trying to say that she wanted justice and that she wanted to do the right thing, essentially, that the defense also pointed out, well, you did want compensation as well, too. And Dawn had to kind of own up and admit that she did want compensation for the time that she had worked on as an employee. Then the defense was asking her about her most recent communications with Diddy, as going back as early or as soon as like 2020, 2021, where essentially Dawn was reaching out to Diddy himself, was trying to get in touch with people about this kind of whole making the band. I believe it's a reboot that they were trying to do where Diddy wasn't necessarily going to be a judge, but instead Dawn wanted to use that opportunity to work with somebody else named Lori Ann Gibson. And so the defense was really kind of hammering her just about the facts that she had talked about with federal prosecutors as far as the different meetings that she had had in 2024, on March 18th of this year, on April 17th of this year, again, just pointing out specifics in regards to this egg incident, but also at the same time going into specifics about whether or not she felt threatened to working with Diddy, and if she felt threatened, if she felt scared for her life, why did she continue reaching out to Diddy as late as 2020 or 2021? You know, as we ended direct examination on Friday, they were really kind of hitting on the point that after Dawn Richard and even her bandmate at the time, Kalina Harper, allegedly witnessed this physical assault with the whole egg skillet thing, because that's kind of how they were summing up this particular incident, was the egg skillet incident. She was asked on Friday, what did Diddy tell you the next day? And essentially, Dawn had said that Diddy essentially said that people wind up missing when they question him and that type of thing, and that was perceived as a death threat. So then when the defense had their chance to kind of cross-examine her, they were like, well, why did you feel threatened, and yet you continue to want to work with him? And so the defense moments, Nicole Westmoreland really kind of hit it on the head. I think a lot of people were possibly wondering, did Dawn come off like a liar, or did she kind of over-embellish some of these incidents? But
right.
To Dawn's accord and to Dawn on the witness stand, she was just saying, you know, she was trying to remember to the best of her ability. So it was kind of tough to watch, but at the same time, I think Dawn Richard held her own. She didn't, kind of get too frazzled necessarily. She didn't get overly emotional, but you could tell that during the cross-examination, it was pretty tough.
And we actually have a poll up right now on YouTube. Do you think the jury views Dawn Richard as a credible witness? We'll see what the results of those are. I wish I had a little bit more time with you, Elizabeth, because I wanted to ask you a little bit more about Kerry Morgan. This is Cassandra Ventura's former best friend on the stand, but I know we have to get you back into that courtroom. Thanks so much for giving us an update. Great reporting as always. Elizabeth Millner, everybody, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jesse.
Now, I'm back here with Afi Patterson. Afi, you want to hear something really interesting as we talk about the questions from YouTubers and we have polls up? So we had a poll that said, has this trial changed your view of Sean Diddy Combs? Ready for this? 56% say yes, 43% say no. Now, look, I'm an attorney, right? And I don't care what the case is. I like the idea is for the jury to go in, clear eyes, clear minds, allow the evidence and the facts and the testimony to sway their opinion. To see that change, 56% of, not the jury, but the people watching this, their view has changed. That's interesting. What do you take away from that?
Well, what was it from the beginning? I think it's pretty low. I think it should be higher toward the negative side, because I think for a long time he's kept his reputation pretty good, pretty much intact. He's a music mogul. He is a self-made businessman. So I would have expected it to be a little bit higher in the negative. Can I also talk about just this case in general? I think that there's a money issue here. And like we were talking about Don Richard and her civil case, and we can talk about Cassie and her civil case. In our justice system, we are allowed to have compensation, but I think compensation is maybe the wrong word. I think that when you've suffered some serious guttural traumas, you are entitled to try to be made whole, and financial compensation, if you will. That helps to make you whole. It doesn't resolve everything, but you're entitled to that. That's what our legal system allows.
Well, look, the defense is going to jump on that, right? The defense is going to jump on the $20 million settlement, or purported $20 million settlement with Sean Combs, the $10 million settlement or expected $10 million settlement that she's going to get with the LA Intercontinental Hotel. The idea is you only went after this, you brought up these allegations for monetary purposes. I don't know if it makes entire sense. Why do I say that? Cover trials all the time where somebody testifies and they're in the middle of active litigation against somebody, and the argument is, well, you would benefit if there was a guilty verdict here, wouldn't you not? Well, she filed her lawsuit, settled with Sean Combs, and then cooperated with the government. I don't quite know what the incentive would be there, right? You know you're going to have to testify, make your allegations public, if you look at people online, there's a lot of people who are questioning her credibility, her authenticity. I don't know if the defense did a significant job or not of saying that financial motivation was a reason for her to come forward, striking at her credibility. I don't know if I saw that. What do you take away from it, Afi?
No, no, I agree. I'm merely focusing on John Richard's part,
Yeah.
and they're questioning her. Why are you coming forward? But I think just with respect to how people feel about him, Diddy, and how they view him, I think a lot of people are turned off by the money aspect. But if the problem is if you focus on the civil suit first, you have people questioning, well, why didn't you go the criminal route? Now that she's going the criminal route, people are saying, well, oh, okay, now they pick apart issues like why did you stay, you should have left early. So it's like you really can't win in situations like this, I think, in intimate partner domestic violence situations.
Well, the way I think the prosecution tried to correct that, I don't know if you know that's the right
Mm,
terminology, is they said, she was in the middle of this, very hard for her to get out, maybe didn't even recognize she was a victim or what was going on, again, taking the allegations
mhm,
as true. And it wasn't until later on that she went through therapy, potentially for
mhm.
PTSD, where she recognizes to recall traumatic episodes and recognizing what happened to her, and then files the lawsuit. Now, the defense could say, this therapy, is it actually recalling real memories of what happened, or is it tainting it? Is it tainting your recollection of what happened? Is it a little bit of a dubious science? And I'm sure that's going to come back and forth a little bit, but it is a question. You were part of this relationship for quite some time, helped to set up these alleged freak offs. The text
Mhm.
messages would say you encourage them. You wonder if it's a question and a problem for the prosecution, but at the same time, the prosecution knew about these messages, they knew about the timeline, they still felt confident to go forward with this case and Cassandra Ventura as their star witness. Okay, we got a question from Last Plane Home. Can Diddy still take a plea deal? It sounds like they were all under the influence, which impairs a sane mind. Afi.
Is the deal still on the table at this point?
Yeah, I mean, well, put it
I
this
think you
way.
can always take
You,
one.
you could always take one, right?
Right, right. You can always take one, but is it still on the table? It depends on how confident the prosecution feels about their case. And I think, again, what this is set to be an 8-week trial. So I think that you're going to have a lot of people. And Jesse, you tell me, I believe there's supposed to be at least two more alleged victims coming through,
Well,
but this is supposed to be an 8-week trial.
there were supposed to be four. One of them can't be found, which is a problem. But look, it's also
Mhm.
different, right? If it was before the trial started, before opening statements, before Cassandra Ventura had to take the stand, your prosecutor would say, listen, we want to avoid this. We want to avoid the jury after seeing this. We want to
Mhm.
avoid putting on alleged victims who have to recount what happened to them. Okay, we might be interested in you accepting a deal. Now, after she takes the stand, now after Dawn Richard takes the stand, I don't know.
Yes, but just also, you were talking about the PTSD therapy that Cassie got. I thought that her testimony showed that, yeah, she was a willing participant very early on. I don't think it was super, super helpful for the prosecution. But also, to your point, I think you mentioned the fact that it was brought up that she may not know that she was a victim. But for me, the line of delineation is when did it become coercion? Clearly coercion. And that is when she wanted to leave and he threatened her with the videos. I would love to see more of a timeline come out because I'm not seeing just a clear timeline. And I think, yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, no. I was going to say
Oh, okay.
I think
Yeah.
this all comes down to closing arguments. There's a lot here.
Mm,
There is a lot
yeah.
here, and I think the prosecution and the defense needs to crystallize it, like you said, with a
Mhm.
timeline, matching it up to the elements. I'm a lawyer, and let
Yeah.
me tell you, explaining this to people, what racketeering is, sex trafficking, how all these
Mhm.
allegations match up to the elements, it's complicated.
It's complex. Yeah, it is.
So, got another question for you. Got a lot of questions coming in right now. Again, we're waiting to go back into the courtroom. As soon as that begins once again, we will give you real-time updates. Okay, question from Poetic O. Can Diddy use a mental health defense if he claims to be a sociopath or narcissist?
I don't know if narcissism is a defense to these RICO charges. I don't know if you being a sociopath is a proper defense. There are different types of mental health, mental defect defenses that you can use, and I don't think these are either one of them. And also the prosecution was talking about, excuse me, the defense. I think they were trying to hint at the fact that Diddy was under some type of force of drug abuse or a state of drug induced violence whenever he would beat her. I think that's a poor argument because she was beaten for what, 9 or 10 years. Furthermore, how do you build $1 billion enterprise if you're consistently um, intoxicated? Or if you are, you're very high functioning. So I don't think that that's the best argument.